Rumor has it we now have the full plot to Spider-Man Brand New Day and who the secret villain will be. Hey everybody, Colton here. So I've been hesitant to make videos on full plot leaks because so many of them are just fan fiction, but several of you guys sent me this one for Spider-Man Brand New Day to take a look at, so we will read through it and I will give you my thoughts, what I think is real, what I think is fake, what I like, what I don't like, how this all connects to Doomsday and Secret Wars. So today's Ask Colton question comes to us from all of you. I've received at least 15 emails this morning on this specific leak for the film that goes into details on Jean Grey and her role in the film, as well as who the true villain of the film will be. So let's read through it and then we'll talk about it on the other side. So here we go. The main villain is the Jackal. Now, the Jackal, he is a character known best for his role in the Clone Saga, and he's one of Peter's college professors. I know, shocker, one of Spider-Man's villains is one of Peter Parker's scientist mentors. Oh, and by the way, Jackal is very likely who is speaking during this part of the trailer.
It can leave the spider vulnerable to threats.
So this leak alleges that Jackal has created a genetic virus that makes the afflicted susceptible to his mind control and possession. He can jump between the bodies of anyone who is infected, which would mean that in the trailer where we saw this villainous mind leap jumping between bodies, that was actually the Jackal and not Jean Grey. But Jean Grey is still very much so in the movie. So Jackal's goal is to bond fully with a powerful host body since his body is dying, and he wants to save himself but also become much more powerful. And this reminds me a lot of when Doc Ock and Spider-Man actually switch bodies in Superior Spider-Man. In that comic, Ock is dying from severe brain damage after all those fights with Spider-Man. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Jackal, he strikes a deal with Tombstone to help gain control of the Hand. Remember, the Hand are the ninjas from the Daredevil Netflix series and the Defenders show, and we see them in the trailer for Brand New Day as well. So the Hand, they are allegedly searching for a new leader, and Jackal uses his possession abilities to make the Hand believe that the beast from their ancient myths has returned and is seeking a proper body to lead them with. Meanwhile, Jean Grey's powers have only recently manifested, and in a world without Professor Xavier and a wide understanding of mutants, she has been on the run and living really rough. So we see the Punisher help her get with William Metzger, who claims that the Department of Damage Control has developed technology that can suppress mutant powers, and this is all based on the tech that Bruce Banner created to suppress him being the Hulk. Ryan did a great video over on Screen Crush about this very thing. Okay, so the idea that Punisher helps Jean get with Metzger, that's interesting. Not that Jean would want to, get rid of her powers. That's perfectly in line with a lot of mutant stories. And I get that. But it is interesting that Frank is the one to get her with Metzger, who in the comics, Metzger hates mutants. So maybe Frank is just genuinely trying to help her, and maybe he knows Metzger from his military days and thinks that he can help her. We can maybe even see Frank encourage her to keep her powers, but then she just really doesn't want to, so he decides that he'll help her do whatever she wants, it's her body, her choice. But then I assume we would see Metzger betray Frank and Jean. So the leak continues with Jean being bound in a DODC facility, which is what we saw in the trailer, and Metzger believes that the odd possessions and seemingly supernatural events happening must be caused by a psychic mutant like Jean Grey. He's not aware that it's actually the Jackal. The leaker then goes on to claim that there is no man-spider, Spider-Man turning into the giant spider, and that there is no Grey Hulk in the movie. Okay. They continue, Punisher is briefly possessed, but Jean is able to force it out of him, so the Jackal possesses Punisher, but Jean undoes it. Jean's mind is too strong for Jackal to pierce, so she is safe from his possession. Jackal also then possesses Bruce Banner later on, but Jean manages to get his wristband off, so Bruce Banner's wristband that prevents him from turning into the Hulk. And when he does that, Hulk is able to fully come out and goes on a rampage. So Jackal then attempts to possess Peter, but to his surprise, he also fails to do so. The virus is in Peter's body, but it isn't allowing Jackal any control, and instead it begins mutating inside of Peter and giving him things like organic webs, increased strength, heightened senses, and spider sense, etc. So, actually, Peter already has most of that. So I guess it just dials it all to, instead of 11, maybe to to 12. Now, the Hand, they want Peter to be the host of the beast, so they push Jackal to figure out a way to control him, and Jackal suggests that if Peter were to become weakened, he might be more susceptible to control. Scorpion is armed with a new suit and a type of synthetic venom that should be able to weaken Spider-Man's resistance. Peter is stung by Scorpion during their battle, and Jackal controls Peter and presents him to the Hand as a new leader for them. Their plan is to resurrect Peter to fully solidify him as one of them. Okay, so what they're doing is, that's some Elektra shit going on right there. It's been a while since I watched Defenders, but that's what happens in that show, I believe. We see Elektra resurrected. Anyway, it turns out that Jean and Peter had a plan all along for Jackal to enter Peter's body, and Jean is now able to suppress Jackal, so essentially trapping his consciousness within Peter, and he can't jump out of bodies anymore, so he's trapped within Spider-Man. Spidey then regains full power and fights off the Hand. Jean, Frank, and Daredevil come to help him. Tombstone has a sort of kill switch for the Jackal virus all along, which he activates. Peter then reverts to a weakened form and is now dying. Jean still senses that the Jackal is inside him, so Peter decides to let himself die so that the possessor will die with him. Okay, no. That right there tells me that I don't think this is true. Peter Parker, especially after No Way Home, does not kill his villains. So I'm calling bullshit on he's letting himself die so that he can kill the Jackal. No. Anyway, they continue that Peter goes and confesses everything to MJ, and then he goes to his Aunt May's grave and sits down to die. I left out the boring stuff like Ned MJ scenes. Okay. Feel free to ask questions if you care about it. There are also 2 post-credit sequences. One involves the symbiote and the other involves the Future Foundation. Okay, so like a Fantastic Four tease, that could be like a Doomsday tease. And then if you have the symbiote in a post-credit scene, I guess if Peter's dying, the symbiote could be the thing that comes in and prevents him from dying. And I think we would see him have the symbiote in Secret Wars, so that's how this could be connecting to that. We also don't know that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is in Doomsday, so maybe the post-credit scenes for Brand New Day kind of set up Doomsday, but more so for Tom Holland's Spider-Man specifically, it sets up his role in Secret Wars. Having said all that, I'm not really buying this. It sounds like fan fiction based on other leaks and the trailer that we have seen. So I also, be careful what I say, I know some Daredevil Born Again info that I can't share right now that contradicts some of what's in this leak. I do think that Jackal will be the villain or one of the villains of the film, and I think that's a cool choice because he's one of the few Spidey villains that we have yet to see done in a movie. And, you know, No Way Home put them in a kind of precarious position on, you know, being able to use his more recognizable villains moving forward in the MCU. So I think Jackal in a movie with Jean Grey, where he's hopping between minds and perhaps created this virus like based on Jean's mutation, I think that all sounds really cool. There's some stuff in this leak. There's some stuff in this leak here that I really do like and I think could be true, or at least that I think would be really cool. I am coming around to finally accepting that Sadie Sink is, I guess, playing Jean Grey, which is great. I love that casting, but I do feel like I've been peer pressured into believing that's who she's playing. I don't really think there is great evidence for it, apart from everyone saying, oh, she's Jean Grey, even some reliable leakers saying so. We do know that she's in Secret Wars, and there was a report that she signed a contract for like 5 other Marvel films. So that does kind of indicate that, or very much so indicates that she is playing a pretty big and important character for this next saga, which will probably be the Mutant Saga. So yeah, Jean Grey, that does make sense. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this leak. Down in the comments below, do you think it's real? Do you like it? Let me know. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video. I've been Colton Ogburn, and I will see you next time. Bye!